The Citadel of 1,000 Worlds was a monument to impossibility. It did not merely sit upon the planet Ethel. It pierced its crust and hung in the upper atmosphere in equal measure, a spire of living crystal and dreaming metal that hummed with the psionic energy of its Empress. From here, Cassia Verandy's will bound star systems together. Her mind was the network through which fleets coordinated, economies thrived, and peace was, for the most part, maintained. But in the Imperial Wing, 3,000 kilometers above the surface dwellers, peace was a foreign concept. Empress Cassia Verandy woke with a silent scream locked in her throat. The heavy, spun plasma silk sheets were soaked, clinging to her skin. Her private chambers were a wreck. A priceless vase from the Cygnian waterworlds had shattered against the far wall. The air, usually filtered and scented with rare botanical oils, tasted like ash and ozone, the lingering byproduct of her uncontrolled night terrors. She sat up, her long, dark hair plastered to her face. She was the most powerful psionic entity in the known galaxy. She could move mountains with a thought, rewrite an enemy's mind, or calm the turbulent heart of a dying star. Yet, she could not command her own sleep. The nightmare was always the same. Fire, the orange plains of Cerulean Prime, the smell of burning atmosphere, the screams of her personal guard as they were consumed, and the voice, her brother, his last transmission, cut short by her own command, the command that saved the sector, but sacrificed his fleet. A quiet chime echoed, signaling an arrival. "Enter," she said. Her voice was hoarse. The doors hissed open, revealing a figure that was, by Citadel standards, profoundly unremarkable. He was bipedal, soft-skinned, and carried no visible antennae or carapace. He wore the simple, gray uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, adorned only with a medical insignia. Dr. James Hawke, her new physician. He walked into the opulent, damaged room with an air of practiced calm that she found infuriating. He was carrying a simple ceramic mug. "Good morning, Your Majesty," he said, his voice smooth. "I see we went for structural reorganization again last night. The maintenance crews are forming a betting pool." Cassia swung her legs off the massive pedestal bed, glaring at him. "Dr. Hawke, my previous physicians understood the meaning of imperial privacy. They waited until they were summoned." "Your previous physicians were Xylosians who treated you like a delicate, psionic artifact," James replied, setting the mug down on a nearby console. "I am human. We tend to prefer treating the patient, and my scans indicated your neural activity spiked into the red zone for 3 consecutive hours. That is not sleep. That is a sustained psychic detonation." He gestured to the mug. "This is coffee. It is a primitive Terran stimulant. It tastes terrible, but it is effective." She ignored it. "Give me the stabilization serum and leave. I have a conclave meeting in less than 1 hour." James shook his head, his expression mild. "No serum. Your Majesty, not today. That synthetic sludge dulls your mind. It is poison when you need to be sharp. I have read the overnight dispatches from the Orion Rift." Cassia's head snapped up. Her eyes, the color of a violet nebula, narrowed with dangerous power. The air around her grew heavy. "You read restricted military dispatches." "I am your doctor," James said, unflinching before the wave of invisible pressure. "Your physical and mental health are intrinsically tied to the health of this empire. And right now, the empire is hemorrhaging. You cannot afford to be dull. You need to be present." She wanted to throw him from the room. She could, with a flick of her wrist. But he was right. The rebellion in the rift was growing, and her inability to make clear, decisive commands was costing lives. Every time she approached a critical decision, the nightmares worsened, clawing at her waking mind. "You overstep yourself, human," she said, her voice cold as interstellar space. "I am paid to, he replied simply. Now, drink the coffee. It will ground you, unlike the serum, which just buries you. She stared at him. This strange, fragile creature from a backwater world, chosen for this post for reasons she could not fathom. He did not fear her. Or if he did, he hid it with an audacity that bordered on treason. She picked up the mug. The liquid was hot, bitter. It was real. "Get out," she said. "Yes, Your Majesty." He gave a short, precise bow. "I will be outside the conclave chambers, should you require medical assistance or more coffee." He left. Cassia was alone again, the bitter taste grounding her, but the smell of ash still lingered in her memory. The strategic conclave was a void. The walls were polished obsidian that seemed to drink the light, designed to focus the mind. In the center, a massive, three-dimensional holographic map of the Empire pulsed, a galaxy in miniature. Red warning icons flashed like an angry rash along the Orion Rift. The attendees were the most powerful beings in her empire. General Ryla, a tall, feline Creosian, her movements fluid and precise. Fleet Admiral Vorlag, a gelatinous Polian whose emotional state was broadcast in subtle shifts of his internal colors. Currently, a muddy, anxious brown. And then, General Thalix. Thalix was a Xylosian, a species that looked as if they were carved from granite. He was massive. His 4 powerful arms crossed over a chestplate of articulated armor. He was her most brilliant and most ruthless general. He was also the one who watched her with the least hidden contempt. "The situation on Antares is untenable, Your Majesty." Thalix's voice rumbled, like boulders grinding together. "The rebel fleet has blockaded the system. Our forces are trapped. They will be annihilated within 48 hours. We must send the third phalanx," General Ryla countered, her voice a smooth purr. "They are the closest reserve fleet." "The third phalanx protects the core worlds," Cassia said, her voice tight. She stared at the map, at the flashing red icons. It was too many, too much fire. "The core is safe," Thalix dismissed. "This rebellion is a cancer. If we do not cut it out now, it will metastasize. Your hesitation has already cost us the Viridia system." Cassia flinched. Viridia. 80 million civilians. A planet she had tried to evacuate, but the order was given too late. "I will not make rash decisions, General," she said. "We are long past rash. Empress, we are at desperate." Thalix pressed. He pointed one of his massive, 4-fingered hands at a planet deep in the rift. "The rebels are massing at Cerulean Prime." The name hit her like a physical blow. The obsidian room dissolved. She was no longer in the conclave. She was on the bridge of her flagship, 10 years ago. The galaxy map was replaced by a tactical display, swarming with enemy contacts. The smell of plasma, overheated circuits. "Majesty, the line is broken." Her brother's voice, tinny over the comms. "They are through, my fleet cannot hold them." "Fall back, Alistair, fall. Back to the rallying point," she had ordered. "I cannot. They are on top of us if I fall back. They will follow me straight to the transport ships, the civilians." She saw the calculation. The terrible, impossible math of war. His fleet, or the 3 million evacuees. "Hold the line, Commander," she said, her voice breaking. "Cassia." "What?" "You have your orders. Hold the line. Buy the transport's time." The silence. The endless, screaming silence. Then, his voice, suddenly calm. "For the Empire, then. Verandy's honor." The comm channel dissolved into static. His signal vanished from her tactical map. "No," Cassia whispered in the conclave, her hands gripping the obsidian rail. The holographic galaxy in the center of the room flickered, distorted, and turned a violent, bloody red. The air pressure plummeted, then spiked, tasting of ozone. The alien generals cried out. Admiral Vorlag's gelatinous form flashed a spectrum of pure terror. General Ryla hissed, her fur standing on end as she clutched her sensitive temples. The psionic backlash was excruciating for them. A wave of pure, unfiltered agony broadcasting from their Empress. "Majesty!" Ryla cried. General Thalix stood firm, his granite-like face contorted in a grimace of pain. A thin, hairline crack appeared on his stone cheek. "She has lost control. Guards sedate her." The Imperial Guards, 8-foot-tall crystalline entities, raised their force pikes, their forms shimmering, but they dared not approach. The psionic storm around Cassia was visible now, a violet aura that warped the very air. Cassia saw none of it. She was trapped. She saw the flames. She saw her brother's face. She was drowning in her failure, the psionic defenses of her mind shattered by a single word. The doors to the conclave hissed open. Dr. James Hawke strode in, carrying his medical kit. The guards moved to block him. "Stand aside," one commanded. "She is not compromised. She is having a psionic panic attack," James snapped, his voice cutting through the chaos. As a human, he was a near blank slate psionically. The Empress's agony was just a crushing headache and a wave of profound nausea to him, not the soul-destroying vision the others were experiencing. He pushed past the guard. "Human," Thalix roared. "You will be unmade, get back." James ignored him. He walked straight into the corona of violet energy, his hair standing on end from the static. He stopped directly in front of Cassia. She was rigid, her eyes wide and unseeing, tears streaming down her face. He did not touch her. He did not pull out a hypospray. He just spoke, his voice calm and penetrating. "Your Majesty, Cassia. The battle for Cerulean Prime was 10 years ago. You won that war." The fire in her mind stuttered. A voice. "Alistair is gone," James said, his voice gentle but firm. "You cannot save him. He died 10 years, 4 months, and 6 days ago." "No, no," she whimpered, her body shaking. "You are not a commander, Cassia. You are the Empress of 1,000 worlds, and you are in a war meeting. General Thalix is trying to convince you to sacrifice another civilian world. And frankly, it is a stupid plan." The absurdity of the statement, the breach of protocol, it was a pinprick of light in her endless darkness. "He wants to use Viridia as bait," James continued, his eyes locked on hers. "The same planet you just lost. He is using your grief against you. Are you going to let him?" The fire receded. The face of her brother faded. She saw the concerned, tired face of the human doctor. "It is not real, Your Majesty," James said softly. "The fire is gone. What is real is the cold railing under your hands. Feel it. Focus on the cold. Focus on my voice." Cassia blinked. The violet aura vanished. The red light snapped back to the cool blues of the galaxy map. The crushing pressure evaporated. The generals gasped, sucking in air. Admiral Vorlag collapsed into a quivering puddle of anxious blue. General Ryla was leaning heavily against the wall, panting. Cassia was soaked in sweat, her knuckles white on the obsidian rail. The room was silent, save for her ragged breathing. The humiliation was a physical thing, sharp and cold in her gut. She looked at James Hawke. He simply nodded, as if he had just reset a dislocated shoulder, and stepped back. General Thalix broke the silence. He had not moved, but the crack on his cheek remained. His voice was laced with a new, sharper contempt. "A stirring performance, Your Majesty. Now, the third phalanx. Or has the human medic usurped command?" Cassia straightened her spine. The terror was still there, a cold snake in her belly. But the nightmare had receded, caged again by the human's words. She looked past Thalix, her gaze falling on James. "Dr. Hawk," she said, her voice pure ice. "You are dismissed from the conclave. You will report to my private chambers at 2000 hours. If one word of what you witnessed passes your lips, I will not have you spaced. I will have you personally dismantled, molecule by molecule." "Am I clear?" "Crystal, Your Majesty," James replied, his tone perfectly level. "May I suggest some water and perhaps a different military advisor?" He bowed, turned, and walked out of the conclave, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Cassia turned back to the holographic map. Her hands were still shaking, but she clasped them behind her back. "General Thalix," she said. "Majesty, your plan to sacrifice Viridia is rejected. You will hold Antares for 12 more hours. Not 11. 12. I will reinforce you with the 5th and the 6th fleets. They will arrive in 13 hours. "They will be too late," Thalix protested. "They will be precisely on time. Because you will hold for 12 hours, Cassia commanded. Her voice did not waver. "General Ryla, mobilize the 3rd Phalanx. Not to the Rift. Send them to the Cerulean system. The rebels are not massing there. They are using it as a symbol. I want it taken back. Now." She had made the decision. The command was given. But as the generals scrambled to obey, Cassia Verandi stared at the map of Cerulean Prime and knew, with dreadful certainty, that the nightmare was only waiting. And the only thing standing between her and the abyss was one impossible, infuriating human doctor. The hour of 2000 was precise, and so was Dr. James Hawk. He arrived at Cassia's chambers exactly on the chime, not a second before or after. The outer doors hissed open, admitting him into the antechamber. He was not kept waiting. The inner doors slid apart immediately, revealing the Empress. The wreckage from the morning had been cleared. The air was clean, filtered, and pure. Cassia herself was immaculate. She had bathed and changed into a simple but severe robe of deep indigo. She stood near the great armored window, a living constellation map of her empire glowing softly at her back. She looked regal, composed, and as cold as a dead moon. "Dr. Hawk," she said, her voice a low vibration. She did not turn to face him. "Your Majesty," James replied. He walked into the center of the vast room, placing his medical kit on a low, obsidian table. He remained standing, his posture relaxed but respectful. "I gave you an order in the conclave," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I threatened you with a death so absolute that your atoms would be scattered. You seemed unimpressed." "I was impressed by the creativity," James said. "Dismantling me molecule by molecule. It is very thorough. But as a threat, it was inefficient. If you wanted me dead, you would have thought it, and I would be a fine paste on your carpet. You threatened me because you were afraid, and you were humiliated, and you needed to re-establish dominance over the one person in that room who was not psionically crippled by your outburst." She turned, slowly. Her violet eyes were not fiery now. They were glaciers. "You are arrogant, human. I am a doctor. Arrogance is a side effect of competence," he countered smoothly. "And you are diverting. You did not summon me here to follow through on your threat. You summoned me because, for the first time in what my research indicates is 10 years, someone pulled you out of the nightmare, and you want to know how I did it, and if I can do it again." She hated him for that. She hated his perception, his soft-skinned, psionically dull analysis that cut straight through her imperial defenses. She had spent a decade building a fortress of fear and power around herself, and this man had just walked through the front gate with a mug of bitter stimulants. "The serums," she stated, gliding toward him. "The stabilization drugs. They are failing. My tolerance has grown. I require a new formulation. No, James said. The word hung in the air. A stunning, profound act of treason. No, she repeated, stopping just a few feet from him. No, I will not give you another formulation, James said, his voice firm. The serums are what is destroying you. I have analyzed the compounds. They are a crude psionic suppressant. They do not stop the nightmares. Your Majesty, they just trap the energy. They build a dam, and every morning, you wake up in the rubble because that dam breaks. The seizures, the outbursts, they are getting stronger. The one you had this morning, it was 30% more powerful than the one you had last week. He tapped a small, flat device on his wrist. A holographic image of her brain appeared between them. It was a complex, beautiful web of light. But there was a dark spot, a festering, shadow-bound tangle near the neural core. Your former physicians, he continued, treated this like an infection. They flooded your system with suppressants to kill the disease. But it is not a disease. It is a wound, a psychic wound, carved into your own mind, and you are holding the knife. The serums are not healing it. They are rust. They are making the blade dull and poisoned. Cassia stared at the image of her own mind. She had seen it before, but the others had called it the Verandi shadow, an unfortunate but manageable side effect of her immense power. You speak in metaphors, Doctor, she said. Fine. Let us be literal. Your power is rooted in your emotional core. Your grief from Cerulean Prime is absolute. Your power, in its attempt to protect you, is isolating that grief. But you cannot isolate something that is part of you. You have created a psychic feedback loop. The more you try to suppress the memory, the more violently it bursts forth. You are not just remembering the fire. Cassia, you are recreating it, psionically. You are burning yourself alive, night after night. Her hands clenched. You were ordered to maintain my health, not to psychoanalyze my past. Your past is your health, James snapped, his calm finally breaking. He lowered his voice. I cannot cure a symptom. I must understand the cause. I need to know what happened. I need to know everything that happened. Not the sanitized, official history. The truth. I need your full medical history. And I need your military service record. She recoiled as if struck. That is impossible. That file is sealed by imperial decree. Then unseal it, he said simply. Your Majesty, I am a Terran. My people are new to this galactic stage. We have no psionic ability to speak of. But we have spent millennia mastering the one thing we do, have a horrifically complex and self-destructive psyche. We have wars. We have trauma. We have nightmares. And we learned how to map them. We learned how to confront them. What you are experiencing. It is an extreme version of what we call post-traumatic stress. Your power just turns the volume up to 1,000. Let me help you lower the volume. You want to talk about it, she said, the words tasting like ash. You believe you can heal a psychic wound of this magnitude by talking. I believe I can give you the tools to heal it yourself. Yes. Talking is the first step. Understanding is the second. Confrontation is the third. He met her gaze. But I will not force you. You are the Empress. You can have me executed. You can find another physician who will happily pump you full of stabilizers until your mind finally shatters and Thalix takes your throne. Or you can grant me access, and we can try something that is not, for the sake of variety, completely insane. The silence stretched. Cassia looked from the blunt, earnest face of the human to the glowing map of her empire. Red lights were still flashing in the Orion Rift. One file, she said, her voice barely a whisper. My service record, Only. You will be monitored by my personal intelligence. Agreed, James said instantly. If you access one byte of data outside that file, she continued, if you speak of this to Ryla, or Vorlog, or any other living soul, your death will be educational. You have made that clear, Your Majesty, James said. He picked up his medical kit. Thank you for your time. Doctor, she called, as he reached the door. He turned. The coffee, she said. This morning. It helped. A small, genuine smile touched the corners of James's mouth. I will have a fresh pot sent to your chambers. Good night, Your Majesty. The door hissed shut, leaving her alone with the shadows in her mind. But for the first time, they seemed, almost imperceivably, to have less power. James did not return to his quarters. He went straight to the Citadel's medical bay, a sterile white sanctuary of alien technology. In his private office, he initiated the connection to the Imperial Archives. His diplomatic clearance, combined with the Empress's direct override, granted him access. The file appeared in his private holographic terminal. It was not a medical chart. It was a military jacket, thick with commendations and battle reports. The name was not Empress Cassia Verandi. It was Princess General Cassia Verandi, House of Cygnus. James leaned forward, his mind racing. The official history stated she was a distant cousin of the previous emperor, chosen for her power. But this was different. He scrolled back, deep into the archives. Cygnus was not a core world. It had been a small, proud, allied kingdom on the edge of the Orion Rift, a warrior kingdom, known for its psionic elite. Cassia was its crown princess. Her brother, Alistair, was the secondary heir and her lead commander. James read. His professional calm dissolved into something approaching awe. This was not a sheltered royal. At 16, she led her first counterinsurgency. At 18, she shattered the Kroll pirate fleet with a psionic maneuver that analysts, even today, did not fully understand. She was brilliant. She was ruthless. She was adored. He found records of her laughing in a mess hall with her soldiers. He found tactical readouts where she had outthought admirals twice her age. This was the woman who existed before the shadows. Then came the Cerulean campaign. The official history called it a tragic but necessary series of battles to halt the usurper's advance. The file told a different story. It was not a series of battles. It was an extermination. The usurper was not just a warlord. He was a psionic entity of immense, dark power. And he had targeted Cygnus. James read the battle logs, his stomach tightening. Cassia's kingdom had been the anvil. They were not just fighting. They were dying, holding the line to protect the core worlds, just as Alistair had. He found the final entry for Cerulean Prime. It was not her planet. It was the last evacuation hub. The previous emperor, a man named Valerius, had been there, overseeing the retreat. The usurper's fleet broke through. Valerius was killed. The chain of command shattered. And in the middle of that inferno, with her home gone, her family dead, and the empire collapsing, Princess General Cassia Verandi, at 22 years of age, took command. She gathered the broken fleets. She found the usurper's flagship. And, according to the log, she had neutralized it. The report was heavily redacted, but the outcome was clear. The usurper's fleet, suddenly leaderless, fell into disarray. Cassia, in a single, desperate act of psionic fury, had ripped the mind from her enemy. The war ended a week later. She was the only surviving high-ranking psionic of the royal bloodline. The empire, leaderless and broken, fell to her. She had not inherited a throne. She had inherited an apocalypse. "My God," James whispered. He looked at the file, then at the image of her brain scan. It was not just grief. It was not just trauma. It was the echo of the psychic blast she had unleashed. The act of killing the usurper, combined with the death of her brother, had fused into a single, catastrophic event. She had saved the empire by sacrificing her home, her family, and, in the process, her own mind. The wound he had seen was a scar of her own making, a monument to her victory and her loss. And the nightmares were the ghosts of the thousands she had killed, and the one she could not save, all screaming at once. He finally understood. He was not treating a patient. He was trying to disarm a psychic bomb that had been ticking for 10 years. Miles away, in the dark, industrial underbelly of the Citadel, General Thalix met with his allies. They gathered in the humming reactor core of a decommissioned dreadnought, a place where no sensor net would dare to listen. His companions were, like him, dissatisfied. Admiral Vrel, Apollyon, whose gelatinous form was a cold, calculating shade of indigo, and Governor Tarsus, a fellow Xylosian who managed the Empire's primary forge worlds. The display in the conclave was illuminating. Vrel pulsed, his voice a synthesized baritone. She is completely compromised. The human doctor is the only thing keeping her upright. She is a puppet, and he is the hand. She is a broken vessel, Thalix rumbled, his forearms crossed. And she is leading us to ruin. Her plan for the Orion Rift is weakness. She divides her fleets. She chases symbols. She sends Ryla to Cerulean, a strategically worthless planet, because she is sentimental. Her sentimentality is our opportunity, Governor Tarsus said, his stone-like features unmoving. My forge worlds are ready. We have been producing surplus ships for 6 months. My personal fleet is now 50% larger than the Imperial garrison in this sector. Good, Thalix said. Admiral Vrel, you have been seeding dissent among the fleet masters. It is easy, Vrel pulsed. They are warriors. They respect strength. They see an Empress who hides in her chambers, who is propped up by a soft-skinned primitive, and who freezes at the moment of decision. They remember the warrior princess she was. They despise the broken relic she has become. Then the time is near, Thalix said. The rebellion in the rift is my instrument. I have been feeding them intelligence. I have guided their attacks, pushing them toward worlds she cannot afford to lose, worlds that echo her first failure. You are playing a dangerous game, General, Tarsus noted. The rebels are butchers. They are a tool, Thalix corrected. A scalpel. I am forcing her hand. Soon, she will face the same choice she faced at Cerulean Prime. Sacrifice the few to save the many. But she is no longer the woman who could make that choice. She will hesitate. She will freeze. And when she does, the Empire will see. The Conclave will depose her, and they will turn to a leader who is not afraid to make the hard decisions. They will turn to me. And the human doctor, Vrel asked. He is a complication, Thalix admitted. He has a strange grounding effect on her, but he is still just a man. When the true fire comes, he will burn like any other. Thalix looked at his co-conspirators. Prepare your forces. The next target I have given the rebels is the Epsilon colony, 3 million civilians. It lies directly in the path of her supply lines. She will be forced to choose the colony, or her fleets. Either way, she loses. James found Cassia in the Celestial Observatory. It was the highest point of the Citadel, a transparent dome of solid crystal that offered an unadulterated 360-degree view of the galaxy. She was standing at the railing, staring into the heart of the nebula that housed the core worlds. She did not summon him. He had come on his own, knowing she would be here. It was past midnight. They look peaceful from here, James said quietly, joining her at the railing. They are not, she replied, her voice weary. They are furnaces of chaos, held in check by gravity and will, much like an empire. I read the file, he said. Her shoulders tensed. And I find myself lacking in appropriate words. Princess General. She flinched at the title. I am not a princess. That kingdom is dust. I am not a general. I am a relic, as Thalix calls me. You are a survivor, James said. You survived a war that killed an emperor. You survived the loss of your entire world. You survived the act of psychic warfare that ended the conflict. But you did not come back whole. She turned to him, her eyes burning with a cold, dry agony. You saw the report. You saw what I did to him, to the usurper. I did not just kill him. I unraveled him. James. I tore his mind apart, piece by piece. And I enjoyed it. I felt his terror. I felt his pain. And it felt like justice. Her voice broke, a raw, jagged sound. And in that same moment, I felt Alistair die. I felt his ship break apart. I felt his fear, and his acceptance, justice and agony, victory and failure, all in one breath. That is the moment. That is the nightmare. It is not a memory. It is. It is a paradox. It is the place my mind goes to die. Every night. I know, James said softly. It is a psychic echo, locked in a loop, a wound held open by your own psionic power. You are trapped between the justice you exacted and the price you paid. So you see, she whispered, turning back to the stars. I am broken. The stabilizers are the only thing that keep the pieces together. Without them, I am just that. No, James said, moving to stand beside her. You are not broken. You are trapped. And you have been trying to fight your way out with force. You have been trying to kill the memory, just as you killed the usurper. But you cannot kill a part of yourself. What, then? She asked, her voice laced with a desperation that cut him to the quick. What is your human solution? Dr. Moore talking. Moore bit her coffee. Yes, he said. And, no, I cannot give you a serum. I cannot make it go away. But I can act as an anchor. You do not have to fight it. You have to accept it. You have to go back into that memory, not as a participant, but as an observer. You have to let the echo pass through you, not consume you. She looked at him, horrified. Go back willingly. That is madness. It will destroy me. It will destroy you. It might, he admitted. My psionic resistance is low, but my neural architecture is alien to this. I might be able to shield you, to ground you, while you process it. On my world, we call it exposure therapy. We can call it applied neural historics if it makes you feel more imperial. Despite herself, a tiny ghost of a smile touched her lips. It was gone in an instant. You are asking me to walk into the fire. I am asking you to finally walk out of it, he corrected gently. You have been standing in it for 10 years. It is time to let it burn out. Cassia looked at the man beside her. This fragile, audacious creature, who had no psionic power, no armies, no armor. He was offering her nothing but his presence. And yet, it was the only thing that had ever worked. She was the Empress of 1,000 worlds. She was the most powerful psychic in the galaxy, and she was terrified. She took a long, shuddering breath, the first truly deep breath she had taken in a decade. Very well, Dr. Hawk, Cassia Verandi said, her voice shaking but resolute. We will try your applied neural historics. What? What must I do? We start small, James said, his voice a calm anchor in her sea of chaos. We do not go back to the fire, not yet. We go back to the day before. We go back to the last good memory. We start with the calm before the storm. The sessions began in a room Cassia had never used. It was a small, domed alcove off the main observatory, designed for quiet contemplation. It contained no consoles, no holographic displays, just two simple chairs and a crystal wall that looked out onto the endless, silent starfield. James insisted on the setting. No thrones, no medical tables, no offices, he had declared. This is not a procedure, and it is not a state matter. It is a conversation with a very stubborn part of yourself. Cassia sat stiffly in one of the chairs, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. I find your clinical assessments borderline insubordinate. Doctor, you find them accurate, Your Majesty. That is why I am still here, James replied, taking the other chair. He was several feet away, a non-threatening distance. Now, close your eyes. I am a psionic. I do not need to close my eyes to see my own mind, she retorted. This is not a psionic exercise. You are not going to fight the memory. You are just going to arrive. Humor me. Close your eyes. With an irritated sigh, she did as he asked. The darkness was immediate, and it was not empty. It pulsed, waiting. Good, his voice came, calm and steady. I am right here. You are in the Citadel. It is the 300th day of your 10th year as Empress. You are safe. Now, we are going back. Not to the fire. We are going to the day before, the last day of peace. Aboard the Cygnus Star. Your brother, Alistair. Can you see him? She resisted. Her mind tried to build walls. This is pointless. Is it? What was he wearing? James pressed, his voice gentle. He was not in his formal uniform. Was he? It was the day before the engagement. The wall cracked, a thread of memory, one she had not dared to touch in 10 years, unspooled. He was wearing, she whispered, her eyes still closed. His black flight fatigues. The old ones, with the scorch mark on the left shoulder from the Kroll skirmish. He always said it was lucky. Good. Where are you? The tactical bay. Our private one. The map is active. We are drinking. Taz. That awful bitter Signian tea he loved. The memory sharpened, blooming into focus. She was there. The air smelled of clean, recycled oxygen, and the faint, spicy aroma of the tea. Alistair was leaning over the holographic map, his brow furrowed. He was younger than she remembered, his face unlined by the coming apocalypse. He is worried, she murmured. The usurper's fleet is moving faster than we thought. He is arguing for a preemptive strike. What did you say? James asked. I told him he was an idiot. A faint smile touched her lips, a phantom expression. I told him his plan was all bravery and no brains, that a preemptive strike would stretch our lines too thin. He threw a stylus at me. It phased right through my head. She could feel the moment, the warmth in the room, the comfortable, familiar energy of her brother, the safety of it. He laughed, she continued, the smile fading. He said, "One day, sister, your caution is going to get us—" Her breath hitched. Killed. The word hung in the air. The memory flickered. The warm light of the tactical bay dimmed. From the corner of her mind, she heard a sound, a single, sharp burst of static. The smell of Taz was replaced by something else. Smoke. Ozone. No, she breathed, her hands gripping the arms of the chair. It is all right, Cassia, James said. His voice was louder now, pulling her. The memory is intruding. The fire is at the door. Do not fight it. Just look at it. Acknowledge it. And then let it go. I cannot. It is coming. The static grew louder, the sound of her brother's last transmission. For the Empire. Cassia. James's voice was a blade. Open your eyes! She snapped them open. She was not on the Cygnus star. She was not in the fire. She was in the small, quiet room. Dr. James Hawke was watching her, his expression intense. The stars wheeled silently beyond the crystal wall. She was shaking. A cold sweat covered her body. It came. It found me. It did not work. It worked perfectly, James said, leaning back. You did not fall. You did not scream. You did not detonate the room. You faced the edge of the trauma, and you chose to come back to me. That is the first time in 10 years you have made that choice. That, Your Majesty, is control. He stood and walked to a small dispenser, retrieving a bulb of water. Here, this is just water. I promise. No stimulants. You seem stimulated enough for one day. She took the bulb, her hand unsteady. He was right. The nightmare had touched her, but it had not consumed her. She felt hollowed out, exhausted. But she also felt, for the first time, a sliver of peace. The fire was still there, but it had not burned her. Not this time. The progress was slow, agonizing. They met every other day, each time. James pushed her a little further. They revisited the mess hall, the barracks, the flight deck. Each time, the static would come. The smell of fire would intrude. Each time, James would be there, a human anchor, pulling her back from the psychic brink with his calm, persistent voice. But as her mind slowly began to mend, her empire continued to fracture. Thalix had been quiet since her orders at the last conclave. Too quiet. Her fleets had moved, reinforcing Antares just in time. The rebellion, however, did not scatter. It consolidated, moving with a speed and precision that belied their ragtag status. Then came the new crisis. The summons for the strategic conclave was urgent. Cassia entered the obsidian room, her back straight. She had slept for 3 hours the night before. True, restful sleep. It was not much, but it was a victory. James was there, standing discreetly near the entrance, his medical kit at his feet. She had made his presence mandatory. Thalix and the others had objected, but her word was law. Your Majesty, General Ryla began, her feline voice tight with anxiety. The rebels have bypassed our blockade at the Orion Nebula. They have struck the Epsilon colony. The map shifted. Epsilon Prime flashed a deep, violent red. Reports are catastrophic, Ryla continued. They are not just attacking. They are glassing the southern continent. We have over 3 million civilians trapped. Cassia's blood ran cold. 3 million. The number was a poisoned echo of Cerulean. Worse, Admiral Vorlag pulsed, his gelatinous form a sickly, terrified yellow. A large part of their fleet has broken off and is on a direct intercept course with the primary supply conduit at Xanthus. If they sever that line, our entire Rift offensive, it will starve in a week. Thalix stepped forward, his granite-like presence dominating the room. The choice is clear, Your Majesty. Cassia looked at the map. The rebel fleet, the burning colony, the vital supply line. They were light years apart. Her fleets could not be in 2 places at once. It is Cerulean Prime all over again, Thalix rumbled, his voice devoid of emotion. A humanitarian disaster, or a strategic one. The supply line fuels the entire war. The lives of billions depend on it. The colony is unfortunate. Sacrifice the few to save the many. The old, terrible math. The room began to feel cold. The obsidian walls seemed to press in. She heard the faint crackle of static at the edge of her hearing. She felt the fire beginning to rise. No, not here. She gripped the railing, her knuckles white. "Hold the line. You have your orders." Her breath hitched. The map blurred. She saw Alistair's face. "Majesty!" Ryla's voice was distant, concerned. Cassia's eyes darted, panicked, and found James. He was watching her, not the map. He saw the terror rising. He did not speak. He just breathed. A slow, deliberate inhale and exhale. Then, he gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shrug, a gesture of such profound and absurd human banality that it shattered the illusion. "It is a mess, is it not?" The fiery said. The static faded. She was not the Princess General. She was the Empress. And this was not a memory. It was a tactical problem. She turned her eyes back to the map. She looked past the burning planet. She looked past the impossible choice. She looked at the movement of the rebel ships. "No," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the cold of interstellar space. The room fell silent. "No, General Thalix," she repeated, louder. "It is not Cerulean Prime. It is a trap." Thalix's massive head tilted. "Majesty, the logic is simple." "The logic is flawed," she snapped. "You assume the rebels want the colony. They do not. They are monsters. But they are not stupid. They are burning Epsilon to draw our fleet. They want us to rush to save the civilians. They want us to choose. Because the real target," she pointed to a spot on the map, "is the supply line. They have split their fleet to make us split ours. The attack on Epsilon is a feint, a horrifically brutal, murderous feint." "Your Majesty," Ryla interjected, "the casualties are a tragedy, but I will not make them a strategic victory for the enemy," Cassia said. Her mind was suddenly, terrifyingly clear. The trauma was not gone, but it was compartmentalized. It was data. "Admiral Vorlag, you will take the 2nd and 4th fleets. You will not go to Epsilon. You will proceed at maximum burn to the Xanthus conduit and engage the rebel fleet there. All of them." "And the colony?" Ryla asked, horrified. "We let them burn." "No," Cassia said. "We will not be predictable. General Ryla, you will take your swiftest cruisers. You will jump to Epsilon, and you will engage in a holding action. A visible holding action. Draw their attention. Harass their capital ships. Buy the ground evacuation as much time as you can. But your primary objective is to pin that fleet. You are the bait." "Bait," Ryla's ears flattened. "The main rebel force expects us to defend Xanthus," Cassia explained. "They expect us to abandon Epsilon. They do not expect us to counterattack at both locations. You will pin the Epsilon fleet, and Admiral Vorlag will annihilate the Xanthus fleet. Then, Vorlag, you will immediately jump to Epsilon and destroy what is left. We will not choose. We will take both." There was a stunned silence. The strategy was audacious. It was incredibly risky. It stretched her forces to the breaking point. It was also brilliant. Thalix stared at her, his stone features unreadable, but Cassia could feel his shock. He had presented her with an impossible choice, expecting her to freeze, to collapse, to retreat into her nightmares. He had expected the broken Princess General. He had gotten the Empress. "You have your orders," Cassia said, her voice final. "Execute them." The generals bowed and scrambled from the room, admirals barking orders into their comms. Only Thalix lingered. He looked at Cassia, then his gaze shifted to James, who was still standing quietly by the door. "A bold move, Your Majesty," Thalix rumbled. "One might almost say, reckless. Let us hope your newfound clarity is not just another symptom of your condition, or perhaps a result of your humans' influence." "My clarity, General," Cassia said, meeting his gaze, "is a result of no longer listening to advisors who present me with only two, very bad, options. Do you have a problem with my command? No, Empress, Thalix said. He bowed. A slow, deliberate gesture. I live to serve. He turned and strode from the room, his heavy footfalls echoing like a hammer on an anvil. When he was gone, Cassia let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 10 years. Her legs felt weak. She gripped the rail. James was at her side in an instant. Are you all right? I think so, she whispered. It was so clear. James, I saw the fire. I saw Alistair. And I just looked past him. I saw the map. I have not been able to do that. Ever. You did not fight the memory, James said, his voice filled with a quiet pride. You accepted it. You used it. The pain. The trauma. You used it to see the trap they were laying for you. You used your past as a weapon. He was testing me, she said, her voice hardening. Thalix. He wanted me to fail. He wanted me to freeze. He did, James said grimly. And the way the rebels moved. It was perfect. Too perfect. As if they knew exactly how to break you. A cold, dreadful suspicion began to form in Cassia's mind. James. How did the rebels know the Epsilon colony would be such a symbolic target for me? The details of Cerulean Prime are sealed. Unless, James said, his eyes meeting hers. Someone in that room unsealed them. The Shadow War had just become terrifyingly real. Cassia's tactical victory at Xanthus was total. Vorlag's fleets had caught the rebel force completely by surprise, annihilating them. Ryla's holding action at Epsilon, however, was a bloodbath. She had saved nearly 2 million civilians, but a third of her cruiser squadron was lost, and the rebels had slipped away before Vorlag's fleet could arrive. It was a victory, but it tasted of ash, and the questions lingered. Cassia did not use the Imperial Intelligence Service. They answered to the Conclave, and therefore, to Thalix. She used her own personal agents, the Cygnian shadows who had served her family for generations. She tasked them with one thing: monitor General Thalix, monitor his communications, his meetings, his finances. While she waited, the sessions with James continued. They were harder now. They were moving past the good memories and into the days of the war. She relived the retreat from Viridia, the loss of her home planet. She walked through the burning ruins of her own palace. James's voice, her only tether to the present. The bond between them was changing. It was no longer just doctor and patient. He was the only person in the galaxy she could be weak in front of. And she was the only person he was. Completely, sometimes brutally, honest with. You are reverting, he told her, after one difficult session. You are trying to build the walls again. The walls keep me safe, she countered, pacing her chamber. The walls keep you prisoner, he shot back, and they are stopping you from seeing the truth. The truth is that Thalix is a traitor. The truth is that my empire is collapsing, and I am sitting here, talking about my feelings with a human. Yes, exactly, James said, stepping in front of her. And the only reason you can even see the truth about Thalix is because you are finally letting yourself feel something other than terror. You are feeling anger. You are feeling suspicion. You are feeling righteous fury. These are the emotions of a leader, Cassia, not a victim. She stopped, stunned by his vehemence. He had never raised his voice to her before. He softened his tone. He is using your trauma against you. He is creating these no-win scenarios to make you break. He does not know that we are mending. Before she could reply, her private comm chimed. It was her shadow agent. Your Majesty, a digitized voice whispered. We have it. A data packet streamed onto her private console. James stood with her as she reviewed it. It was worse than she could have imagined. The data showed encrypted communications, not just from Thalix, from Governor Tarsus, the Xylosian who ran the Forge Worlds, from Admiral Vrel, the Polian who commanded the home fleet. It was a conspiracy. She watched a holographic recording, a secret meeting. It was Thalix, Vrel, and Tarsus. Her weakness is the poison. Thalix's voice rumbled. She is broken. The human is just a crutch. I am forcing her hand. Epsilon was a test. She passed, barely. But she is diverting resources to Cerulean, a worthless shrine, for sentimental reasons. She is not fit. When she finally shatters, and she will, the Conclave will turn to me. And the rebellion? Vrel pulsed, his form a nervous indigo. They are my tool, Thalix said. I have been arming them through Tarsus's forges. I have been feeding them Vrel's fleet movements. They are the scalpel I am using to cut the cancer from the throne. Cassia felt the blood drain from her face. He created the rebellion. He was arming them. The ships Ryla had fought. They were built in her own forges. The lives lost. Her people, murdered by her own generals. The betrayal was so vast, so absolute, it almost static, fire. She felt the nightmare roar up, sensing her rage, her pain. Cassia. James's voice was sharp. He grabbed her arm. It was the first time he had ever touched her. The physical contact was a shock, a jolt of human warmth against her cold skin. Do not go. Stay here. Stay with me. This is not grief. This is not trauma. This is rage. Use it. She looked at the recording of the traitors. The fire did not recede. It focused. It turned from a wildfire into a white-hot blade. The psionic energy in the room did not explode. It dropped to a terrifying, absolute zero. Admiral Vrel, she said, her voice a deadly whisper. He is in the Citadel. He is the weakest. What are you going to do? James asked, his hand still on her arm. You wanted me to confront my past, Doctor, Cassia said, pulling her arm free. She straightened to her full, imperial height. General Thalix has been kind enough to bring it to my present. I will not be a victim, and I will not be a puppet. She strode to her console. Guards, find Admiral Vrel, bring him to the interrogation chamber, and send for Dr. Hawk. I want him to witness his therapy in action. The interrogation chamber was a dull, soundproofed cube. Admiral Vrel floated in the center, his gelatinous form a chaotic swirl of frightened colors. Your Majesty, I do not understand. This is an outrage, he synthesized. Cassia stood in the shadows. James was beside her. You have been feeding fleet movements to the Orion rebels, Cassia stated. It was not a question. Vrel's form flashed a violent purple. Lies, slander. General Thalix will hear of this. General Thalix is the one who gave you the codes, Cassia said. Vrel seemed to deflate. I do not know what you mean. My brother died because our lines were stretched too thin, Cassia said, stepping into the light. Her violet eyes were glowing, but not with panic. It was a cold, controlled fire. The rebels at Epsilon knew exactly where to strike to stretch us thin again. Because you told them. It was to save the Empire, Vrel shrieked, his form losing cohesion. From you, you are weak, you are broken. I was, Cassia agreed. But I am mending. And you are a traitor who sold us out for a promise of power from a warlord. Thalix is a visionary. Thalix is a fool, Cassia said. And you are his accomplice. You will tell me everything, every ship, every contact, every plan. Never, Vrel pulsed. Cassia looked at James. He is resisting. He believes his Polian mind is too alien for me to read. He is probably right, James said quietly. Their neural structure is non-linear. He is wrong, Cassia said. She raised her hand. I am not going to read his mind. Doctor, I am going to edit it. She did not wait for a reply. She reached out with her power, not with the uncontrolled fury of her nightmares, but with the pinpoint precision of a surgeon. She found the wound James had spoken of, the dark, paradoxical tangle in her own mind. And for the first time, she did not pull away from it. She drew from it. She drew on the cold, focused rage of the warrior she had been. Vrel screamed, a synthetic wail as Cassia's mind touched his. He was not prepared for this. He expected the Empress's grief, her fear. He did not expect the cold, absolute will of the Princess General. She did not see his thoughts. She saw her ships burning. She saw Ryla's cruisers ripped apart. She saw the civilians on Epsilon running from fire. This is your fault. The thought was not hers. It was his, ripped from his consciousness. She saw the meetings. She saw Thalix. She saw the data streams. Stop, please, Vrel begged. Cassia pulled back. She was breathing heavily, but she was smiling. It was not a pleasant smile. He has a fleet, she said, turning to James. A hidden fleet. Governor Tarsus has been building it for him on a dead moon in the Xylo system. That is his endgame. He is not just staging a coup. He is planning a civil war. She turned back to Vrel, who was now a trembling, pale gray puddle. Guards, she commanded. Take this thing to a holding cell. He is a traitor to the Empire. His sentence will be decided later. As the guards dragged the Polian out, James looked at Cassia. She was vibrating with power, flushed with victory. But her eyes, they were still cold. That was effective, he said carefully. That, she said, was clarity. Thalix thinks he knows my weakness. He does not realize he has just been sharpening my greatest weapon. He is so busy recreating my nightmare. He has no idea I am about to become his. She walked out of the chamber, her robes sweeping behind her. James watched her go, a profound sense of unease settling over him. He had wanted to help her heal. He had wanted her to confront the fire. He had not considered, until this very moment, what would happen when she learned to control it. He had helped her cage her demons, but he was beginning to suspect he had just handed her the key. The Citadel was a fortress, but it was a fortress built on the assumption of loyalty. When that loyalty fractured, the walls became a cage. The alarm was not a siren. It was a psychic scream that ripped through the minds of every psionic in the Citadel. A wave of pure, automated terror. Cassia's personal guard, the crystalline entities, shattered in place, their forms exploding into a billion shards of useless light. Simultaneously, the Citadel rocked, a low, tectonic groan of stressed metal. "What is that?" Cassia demanded, rising from her console in the strategic conclave room, which she had converted into her command center. James Hawke, who had been reviewing Vrel's forced confession, did not even look up. "That," he said, his voice grim, "would be the arrival of the other, very secret, very angry fleet, Governor Tarsus, I presume." The obsidian walls flickered as auxiliary power kicked in. The great holographic map of the Empire dissolved into static, replaced by a flashing red icon of the Citadel itself. "Report!" Cassia shouted into the comm. The channel was dead. "He has cut us off," she whispered, a cold dread seeping into her newfound fury. "He is not just attacking. He is performing a decapitation." A secondary, jarring explosion rocked the spire. This one was closer. "That was internal," James said, grabbing his medical kit. "He has ground troops. His Xylosian loyalists. They are already inside." The scale of it. The audacity. She had known. She had seen the proof, but knowing a betrayal and experiencing it were two different things. He was not just staging a coup. He was executing a war, and she was at ground zero. The calm, cold focus she had felt in the interrogation room began to crack. The sound of the internal explosions, the heavy, rhythmic thud of distant weapons fire. It was too familiar. Static. She heard it at the edge of her hearing. The smell of ozone. "No," she breathed, stepping back from the dead console. "Not now." "Cassia." James moved to her side, his eyes scanning her, clinical and concerned. It is the same," she whispered, her hands rising to her temples. "The alarms, the internal breaches. It is Cyrillian. He is doing it again." She had felt inadequate before. Now, she felt something far worse. She felt predictable. Thalix had seen her mending. He had seen her new strength. And he had decided, with brutal efficiency, to simply break her again, harder this time. She looked at James, her violet eyes, wide with a terror he had not seen since their first sessions. I cannot. I am not strong enough. He knows me. He built this just for me." "Yes, he did," James said, his voice a sharp, sudden blade that cut through her panic. She stared at him, shocked. "What?" "He did build this for you," James said, his voice intense, his eyes boring into hers. "He built this entire war, this rebellion, this trap, all to trigger your nightmare. He has spent months studying your exact breaking point, and he has just, finally, hit it." "James, that is not helping." "I am not finished," he said. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip surprisingly strong. "He studied your weakness. He knows your trauma better than anyone. But he does not know me. He does not know what we have been doing. He thinks he is fighting the broken Empress. He thinks he is triggering the same, uncontrolled explosion." He stared at her, a strange, fierce light in his eyes. He had just seen the final piece of the puzzle. It was not about grounding her. It was not about pulling her back. "All this time, Cassia," he said, his voice low and fast. "We have been treating this like a wound. We have been trying to close it. We have been trying to put the fire out." A massive crash echoed from the floors below, the heavy thud of Xylosian shock troops. They were close. "He is right about one thing," James said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You cannot be the Empress he sees, the broken, weeping girl. You have to be the woman who ended the usurper, the Princess General, the fire." I cannot," she sobbed. The static was deafening now. The fire was at her back. "If I let it in, it will burn us. It will burn the Citadel. I will lose myself. I will not be able to come back." "Yes, you will," he said, his voice an iron core of certainty. "Because I am right here. You are not alone in that fire. Not this time. You are the most powerful psionic in the galaxy, but your power is tied to your pain. So stop fighting it. Stop running from it. Use it." He let go of her shoulders and tapped his own temple. "You said my mind was simple, solid," he said. "You are right. I am just a human. I am a baseline. I am ground. Stop trying to push the fire down. Cassia, let it come. Let it all come. The rage, the grief, the power that tore a god to pieces. Let it loose. But this time, hold on to me. Use my mind as your anchor. I will not let you drift away. I will not let you burn. I will be the thing that pulls you back." He was insane. It was the most dangerous, reckless, insane medical advice in the history of the galaxy. It would kill him. It would shatter his simple, human mind into 1,000 pieces. "I cannot ask you to do that," she whispered. "You did not ask," James said. "The doctor is prescribing. Now, Your Majesty, the enemy is at the gate. Your move." Another explosion, this one just outside the conclave doors. They buckled inward, heavy metal groaning. Cassia looked at the buckling doors. She looked at James Hawke, this impossible man, who was offering his sanity as a shield. She closed her eyes. She did not push the nightmare away. She did not try to find a good memory. She turned, in her mind, and faced the inferno. "Alistair." She opened the door. The fire did not just enter. It detonated. 10 years of suppressed grief, 10 years of rage, the psychic echo of her brother's death, the ghost of the usurper, the pain of Epsilon, the betrayal of Thalix. It all roared into her conscious mind, a supernova of pure, untamed psionic energy. In the physical world, James Hawke cried out, falling to one knee. His nose was bleeding. To him, it was like laying his bare mind on an active fusion reactor. He saw it all. He saw the fire. He saw Alistair's face. He felt her grief. It was an ocean of agony, and he was a single, tiny boat. "Hold on, James," he thought, gritting his teeth. "Be the anchor. Be the ground." Cassia's eyes snapped open. They were not violet. They were pure, blinding, white-hot stars. The air in the conclave room did not just pressurize, it solidified. The buckling doors were blown outward, vaporizing the Xylosian shock troops on the other side in a concussive blast of raw will. She raised her hand. Across the citadel, the battle stopped. Loyalist guards, pinned down by traitors, suddenly found invisible shields of pure force protecting them. Traitorous weapon systems overloaded. The internal comms, dead moments before, shrieked to life. But it was not an alert. It was her voice. It was everywhere. It was in the mind of every loyal soldier. "Thalix has betrayed us. Tarsus has betrayed us. The war is not in the rift. It is here. Hold your ground. Your Empress is with you." In orbit, the captain of her flagship, the Indomitable, gripped his console as his entire tactical display was usurped. A new set of firing solutions appeared. Intricate, perfect, targeting Tarsus's hidden fleet. "By the stars," the captain whispered. The orders were not coming to his ship. They were coming from his ship. The Empress. She was using his ship. She was his ship. Cassia stood in the center of the ruined room, her body trembling from the strain, a small trickle of blood beneath her nose. Her mind was everywhere. She was in orbit, guiding her fleets. She was in the lower decks, crushing Thalix's reinforcements. She was a goddess of war, her pain forged into a divine weapon, and at her feet, James Hawke was shaking, his face pale, sweat pouring from him. But he was smiling. "That is one hell of a side effect," he managed to choke out. "He is coming," Cassia said. Her voice was a symphony, layered with 1,000 echoes. "He feels me. He is coming here." She was right. Thalix was a warrior. When his fleets were thrown into chaos, when his ground troops were suddenly paralyzed by invisible forces, he did not retreat. He advanced. He knew where she was. He knew he had to cut the head from the snake. The wall of the conclave dissolved, not with an explosion. It was pushed apart, melted, and torn by Xylosian siege cannons. General Thalix stood in the breach. He was clad in his personal battle armor, a hulking behemoth of black metal and stone. In his 4 hands, he held 2 power axes and 2 heavy plasma repeaters. He strode into the room, his granite features contorted in a mask of pure fury. His Xylosian physiology, dense and crystalline, made him highly resistant to her psionic attacks. He was a walking tank, a physical counter to her psychic power. "So, he rumbled, his voice shaking the floor. The puppet has teeth. The human has taught you a new trick. Cassia faced him. She was still channeling her will to her fleets, still fighting a war on a dozen fronts. But her attention was here. She raised a hand, and a wave of pure force, enough to level a building, slammed into him. Thalix barely flinched. He slid back a few feet, his metal boots grinding on the floor. Your power is impressive, Empress. But I am Xylosian. Your emotions cannot break stone. And you are distracted. You are fighting a war, while I am only fighting you. He raised his repeaters and fired. James tackled Cassia, pushing her behind the remains of the obsidian map table. He is right. You are spread too thin. You cannot fight him, and the fleet at the same time. I must, she gasped, the strain of the anchor beginning to show. The white light in her eyes flickered, the violet returning. The nightmare was pushing back, sensing her fear of this one. Physical threat, static, fire. No, stay with me, James yelled. Thalix advanced, laughing, a deep, grinding sound. Your pet is loyal. He will die with you. He raised his axe to bring it down on the console, to cleave them both in two. She is not my pet, James snapped, rolling out from behind the console. She is my patient. And you, General, are a disease. Thalix turned, annoyed by the distraction. You, human. You will die first. Probably, James agreed, and raised his hand. He was not holding a weapon. He was holding a standard medical hypospray. But I am a doctor. I know anatomy. Even Xylosian. Before Thalix could react, James lunged, jamming the hypospray against a thin seam in the armor, just above the collar. He depressed the plunger. Thalix bellowed and swatted James, sending the human flying across the room. James hit the far wall with a sickening crack and slumped to the floor, unmoving. James! Cassia screamed. The anchor was gone. The fire, the nightmare, the supernova of her power, all of it, with no ground, no tether, turned inward. Her mind dissolved. The connection to her fleet vanished. The shields protecting her soldiers evaporated. The white light in her eyes extinguished, replaced by the pure, blind terror of Cerulean Prime. She collapsed, curling into a ball, her silent scream of agony her only defense. Thalix stood over her, his massive form shaking. The hypospray dangled from his neck. What did you? He gasped. He had expected a poison, a sedative. James Hawk, his ribs certainly broken, pushed himself up on one elbow. He was grinning, blood staining his teeth. A triple dose of cardiac stimulant, James choked out. Your Xylosian heart is a 4-chambered, high-pressure marvel. It should find that interesting, Thalix roared. His armored chest plate creaked. His enhanced physiology, already under the strain of battle, was being sent into overdrive. His hearts were hammering, trying to burst from his chest. He was dying, but he was still standing. I will finish, he wheezed, raising his axe. He would kill her. Even in his death, he would complete his mission. He looked down at the broken, weeping woman, the Empress. This was not the victory he wanted. The sound of his own labored breathing, the thunder of his dying hearts, was all he could hear. He did not hear the scrape of metal on stone. Cassia had not moved. She was still lost, drowned in the fire. But the Princess General was not. When James fell, when the anchor was ripped away, Cassia had fractured. One part of her mind, the largest, was lost to the nightmare. But the small, cold, hard part of her, the warrior she had been, the part that James had so carefully nurtured. It had not broken. It had simply been waiting. While the Empress wept, the general acted. This hand that rose from the floor was not trembling. It was steady. It was not her hand. Not really. It was her will. It was wrapped around the fallen force pike of a shattered Imperial Guard. Thalix, his vision blurring from the cardiac overload, his focus on the Empress, did not even see it. The force pike, propelled by a single, focused thought of pure, cold rage, flew across the room. It struck Thalix from the side, punching cleanly through the weaker armor under his forearms, piercing all 4 of his lungs and his overstrained hearts. Thalix stopped. He looked down at the glowing pike embedded in his chest. He had failed. He crashed to his knees, his weapons clattering to the floor. The sound of his fall, the sudden silence, it broke the nightmare's hold. Cassia gasped, her eyes clearing. The fire receded, leaving her empty, hollow, and aching. She saw James, slumped against the wall, bleeding but conscious. She saw Thalix, on his knees, dying. She got to her feet, her body screaming in protest. She walked to her general, her traitor. She pulled the pike free. Thalix collapsed onto his chest, gasping, a thick, black fluid bubbling from his mouth. You were magnificent, he wheezed, his voice a wet rattle. Just as you were, at Cerulean. Cassia stared at him, the pike heavy in her hand. You did this. You armed them. You killed my people, my soldiers, at Epsilon. A whetstone. Must be hard, he gasped, his massive body shuddering. To sharpen a blade. You wanted the throne, she whispered, the betrayal a cold, dead weight. No, Thalix choked. He managed to turn his head, to look at her one last time. His eyes were no longer full of contempt. They were proud. I wanted the Empress. The true Empress. The Empire needs its fire, its blade, not its weeping girl. He looked past her, at James, who was struggling to sit up. The human. He did it. He forged you, where I could not. Thalix, Cassia said, her voice breaking. Why, I tested you, he said, his final breath rattling. I created the pressure to forge the diamond or break the glass. I was loyal to the Empire. You needed to be. He looked at her, at the woman who was both the weeping girl and the blade. I did not fail, he whispered. Good. His massive head fell to the stone floor. General Thalix was dead. The room was silent, save for James's pained breathing. Cassia stood over the body of her greatest enemy, her most loyal general, her creator, and her destroyer. The battle for the Citadel was over. The battle for her soul had just begun. The silence that fell in the ruined conclave was heavier than the stone of Thalix's corpse. It was absolute, a vacuum left by the cessation of a war and the death of its architect. Cassia stood, the force pike humming softly in her hand, its energy reflecting in the cooling, black fluid that pooled around the general. She was breathing, but the air felt thin. The supernova of her power had rescended, leaving behind an aching, hollow void. I did not fail. Thalix's last words echoed, A terrible, confusing epitaph. He was a traitor. He was a murderer. And he was, perhaps, the only person who truly understood what the Empire needed. A pained groan from the far wall snapped her out of her paralysis. James. She let the pike clatter to the floor. She ran to him, her imperial robes tangling in the debris. He was slumped against the wall, his eyes half closed, his face a mask of pain, blood trickling from his mouth. "Do not," he wheezed. "Do not let me write the after-action report," he coughed. A wet, agonizing sound. "My ribs have lodged a formal protest." "Be quiet, doctor," she ordered, her voice trembling. She knelt beside him, her hands hovering, afraid to touch him. "You are catastrophically injured." "I am aware," he gasped. "The Xylosian swat is not a gentle therapeutic technique. But you... He looked at her, his eyes struggling to focus. "The fire. It is gone." She paused. She looked inside herself. The roaring inferno, the nightmare of Cerulean, the static, the voice of her brother. It was all gone, but it was not peace. "It is empty," she whispered. "James, it is all gone. I feel cold." "Good," he managed, a bloody smile touching his lips. "Cold is a baseline. We can work with cold." The main doors of the conclave, the ones Thalix had not destroyed, hissed open. General Ryla stormed in, flanked by a dozen loyalist guards. The Creosian stopped dead, her fur bristling, her golden, feline eyes, taking in the scene, the pulverized traitor troops, the melted walls, the dead, four-armed form of General Thalix, and her Empress, kneeling beside the bleeding human doctor. "By the..." Ryla breathed. "Majesty, you are..." "I am intact," Cassia said, rising. Her voice was flat, exhausted. She felt scoured clean. "General Ryla, the battle for the Citadel is over. General Thalix is dead. Governor Tarsus and Admiral Vrel are traitors. Have them secured. Their hidden fleet in the Xylo system. Neutralize it." "Majesty?" Ryla asked, stunned. "How do you—" "Just do it," Cassia said, weariness crashing down on her. "And send a medical team, the best one. Dr. Hawk is... He is fine," James interjected, wincing. "He just needs a significant nap, and possibly new lungs." Ryla, her tactical mind finally rebooting, snapped a salute. "At once, Your Majesty. I do not understand what has happened here. Thalix." Cassia looked down at the massive, dead Xylosian. "He was a traitor. General. He built an army against me. He funded the rebellion. He murdered millions to prove a point." "A point?" Ryla was aghast. "He believed the Empire needed a blade," Cassia said, her voice hollow. "He did not believe I was one. He spent 10 years trying to forge me." She looked at James, then back at Thalix. "He succeeded, just not in the way he intended." The medical team was efficient. James was stabilized and moved to the high-security wing of the Citadel medbay. Cassia oversaw the immediate restoration of command, the arrests of the co-conspirators, and the systematic dismantling of Thalix's shadow army. For 3 days, she did not sleep. She did not need to. The silence in her mind was profound. She was clear. She was precise. She was the Empress Thalix had wanted. And she had never felt more empty. When the Empire was finally, precariously, stable, she went to the medbay. James was propped up in a biofoam cradle, his chest wrapped in a shimmering, regenerative field. He was awake. He looked pale, bruised, but his eyes were clear. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice stronger. "I must protest the quality of the service in this facility. The food is gelatinous, and it is not even Admiral Vorlog." A small, genuine smile touched her lips. He is in a holding cell, awaiting trial. I do not think he would appreciate the comparison. She sat in the simple chair beside his bed. The silence stretched between them, comfortable, familiar. "How are your new lungs?" she asked. "They are actually my old lungs," James said. "They just had to be reinflated. 4 broken ribs, 1 cracked, a severe concussion, and my cardiac readings, according to the Xylosian physician who treated me, were, and I quote, hilariously impossible. I believe I am persona non grata with the local medical guild for medical heresy." "You are a fool, James Hawke," she said softly. "You have mentioned that," he replied. "But we are alive. And you, how is the vacancy?" She looked down at her hands. "It is quiet. The fire is gone. The nightmare has not returned. When I sleep, there is nothing. It is just black. But it is not gone." He frowned. "What is not gone?" "The wound," she said, meeting his gaze. "The thing you saw on my brain scans. The shadow. I thought the fire was the wound. But it is not. The fire was just the symptom. The fire is gone. But the scar is still there. It is cold. It is hollow." James was silent for a long time, his medical mind processing this. "The trauma is gone, but the damage remains," he murmured. "That does not make sense. Post-traumatic stress is a feedback loop. The memory is the trauma. If the loop is broken—" "It was not just a loop," Cassia said, the cold clarity in her mind piecing it all together. "It was something else. When I fought Thalix, when you were my anchor, I did not just feel my own power. I felt his." "Thalix." "No," she said, shaking her head. "The usurper. The one I killed 10 years ago. The one who started it all." She leaned forward, her violet eyes intense. "James, when I unraveled him, I told you I felt his terror, his rage. But there was something else. Something beneath his mind. A shadow that was not him. It was old. It was hungry." James's professional demeanor snapped into place. "A psionic entity? A parasite?" "I think so," she whispered. "I think the usurper. He was not the true enemy." "He was a vessel. And when you destroyed the vessel," James finished, his face paling, "the passenger needed a new ride." The horror of it settled over them. "It jumped," Cassia breathed. "When I was at my most powerful, my most vulnerable, covered in the psychic echo of my brother's death and the usurper's execution, it latched onto me." "My God," James whispered. "Cassia, all this time, 10 years, the nightmares, the fire, the feedback loop, it was not just your mind, your grief. It was being maintained." "It was being farmed," she said, her voice filled with a cold, ancient fury. "The thing, it feeds on psionic trauma. It kept the wound open. It kept the memory of Alistair fresh. It made me relive it, night after night. Because that was its food." "A psychic vampire," James said, his human mind grappling with the alien concept. "And Thalix. His entire plan to break you, to force you to relive the trauma. He was an unknowing instrument," Cassia finished. "He was the farmer. He was tending the fields. He was creating new trauma. Epsilon. The coup. To make me produce more. He thought he was forging a blade. He was just feeding a monster. And when we fought him," James said, his mind racing, "when I anchored you, you did not just control the fire. You used it. You took its food source away." "I starved it," she said. The hollow, cold feeling in her mind suddenly made a terrible, new sense. "It is not gone. It is dormant. It is the void. It is waiting. It is starving. And it is still inside me." She stood up, pacing the small room. It is too weak to create the nightmares now, but it is still there. A cancer. And it will wait. It will wait a year, 10 years, until I am weak, until there is new grief, and then it will start again. No, James said, his voice iron. He began to unclip the regenerative field monitors from his chest. "What are you doing?" Cassia demanded. "I am discharging myself," he said, gritting his teeth as he swung his legs. Very slowly, over the side of the bed. "Your ribs are broken." "Technically, they are mending," he corrected, his face white with pain. "And we have a parasite to remove." "We do not know how," she said, rushing to his side, trying to support him. "This is beyond therapy. This is something else." "It is," James agreed. "It is an exorcism. And I have an idea." He leaned heavily on her, and she guided him out of the medbay, overriding the protests of the medical staff with a single, cold glare. They returned to the small, domed room in the observatory, the quiet place, the safe place. James sat, with a pained groan, in one of the chairs. Cassia remained standing, a predator circling. "All right," he said, breathing heavily. "Let us apply some human logic to this alien god-monster problem. It is weak, it is starving, and it is trapped." "And it wants a new host," Cassia said. "A psionic host. A rich food source." "Exactly," James said. "It wants you. It needs you. It is desperate." "So, what is your plan, Doctor?" she asked, her voice tight. "How do we draw it out? We cannot kill it without me killing myself." "We do not kill it," James said. "We transfer it. We offer it bait." She stared at him. "Bait? Me," he said simply. "No." The word was absolute. "That is not... No. It would kill you. It would eat your mind in a second. You are not psionic. You have no defenses." "That is the point," he said, leaning forward, his eyes bright with a feverish, insane brilliance. "I am not psionic. My mind. It is poison to it. It feeds on psychic energy. My mind has none. It is like a creature that feeds on starlight trying to eat a handful of dirt. It would choke on me." "It would be disgusting to it," Cassia said, catching his logic. "Your mind. It is all logic and biology and bad jokes. There is no psychic resonance." "I am deeply insulted," James said. "But yes. It wants a 5-star meal. It wants you. I am a cold, stale sandwich. It will latch on, realize its mistake, and then—" "And then what?" she asked. "And then it will be out of you," he said. "It will be in the connection between us, the anchor I created. And in that second, while it is recoiling, while it is choking on my awful human thoughts, you, Cassia, you." "I cut the cord," she whispered, the plan forming, terrible and perfect. "I trap it, in the nothing between us. And it starves. For good," he finished. "It is a clean excision." "It could kill you, James," she said, her voice soft. "The psychic shock of it just touching you." "I have 4 broken ribs," he said, with a weak smile. "I am already in considerable pain. What is a little soul agony between friends?" He held out his hand. "I cannot be the anchor if you do not trust me, and you cannot cut the cord if I do not trust you." She looked at his hand, this fragile, simple, impossible man. He was offering his sanity, his very soul, to save hers. She did not take his hand. She sat in the chair opposite him. She closed her eyes. "Do it," he whispered. She reached out with her mind. She found the psychic anchor, the connection they had forged in the fire. It was still there, strong, resilient. And she opened the door. She found the creature. It was huddled in the cold, hollow scar of her mind. It was a living shadow, a tangle of ancient, cold hunger. It sensed her. It pulsed, weakly, with fear. It is afraid, she thought. The idea strengthened her. Good. James's voice entered her mind, calm and steady, on their private channel. Now, show it the buffet. She focused her will. She pushed the creature, gently, toward the bridge, the connection to James. The creature hesitated. Show it fear, James instructed. Show it the memory of me, when Thalix hit me. My fear of dying. Cassia recoiled. No. Do it, he commanded. She focused on that memory, the crack of his ribs. His gasp, his fear. She broadcast it toward the creature. The shadow stirred. It was tempted. It was new trauma. Fresh. Potent. Now. Cassia. She heard James scream, both in her mind and in the room. Evict it. With all her will. All her rage. All herself. She roared into her own mind, get out. The creature, starving, terrified of her strength, and lured by the easy meal of James's fear, leapt. It left her. The hollow, cold void vanished. Cassia's mind was, for the first time in her life, her own. The scar was just a scar. The memory of Alistair was just a memory. It was sad. It was a terrible loss, but it was quiet. Then she felt James. He was screaming. In the physical world. His body went rigid in the chair, his back arching, a silent, agonizing wail tearing from his throat. Blood streamed from his nose, his ears. She had to cut the cord. She looked at the psychic bridge between them. The shadow was on it. It was writhing. It was horrified. James's mind. It was burning it. It was poison. It was logic and biology and stubbornness and hope. It was dirt. The creature was trying to get back. It was lunging back toward her. Cassia James's mental voice shrieked. A last, desperate act of will. Now cut it. I cannot hold it. She saw him. She saw the creature. She saw the bridge. She was the blade. She was the Princess General. She was the Empress. She cut the cord. A silent, psychic thunderclap threw them both backward. Cassia was free. She opened her eyes. James was on the floor. He was not moving. The creature, the void that hungers, trapped in the severed connection with no host, no food. It dissolved. It was gone. James, she whispered. She scrambled to him. James, she cried, her voice cracking. She rolled him over. He was pale as death. But he was breathing. Just barely. James Hawke, she ordered, shaking him. You will not die. That is an order. He groaned. A tiny sound. His eyes fluttered open. They were bloodshot. But they were his. Did we get it? He mumbled. Or am I now the hungry void guy because I could really use a cheeseburger? A sound she had not made in 10 years escaped her. A laugh. It was a choked, broken sound, but it was a laugh. It was mixed with a sob. You, she said, tears of relief streaming down her face. You are just a human. Good, he whispered, his eyes closing again. Best job in the galaxy. He was unconscious, but he was alive, and she was free. For 2 full days. James Hawke did not wake. He lay in the Citadel's most advanced regenerative cradle, his body healing from the broken ribs and ruptured capillaries. But his mind, according to the baffled Xylosian physicians, was profoundly and inexplicably quiet. Cassia sat by his bedside. She did not sleep. She did not need to. Her mind, scoured clean of the parasite and its 10-year reign of terror, was preternaturally clear. The hollowness had been replaced by a quiet, simple presence. She was, simply, herself. She ran the Empire from that simple chair in the medbay. General Ryla, she said, her voice low but carrying, as the Creosian general entered, her boots silent on the sterile floor. Your Majesty, Ryla bowed, her golden eyes flicking to the unconscious human. His condition. He is resting, Cassia said. Report. Ryla's fur was flat with exhaustion, but her posture was rigid. It is a disaster, Majesty. Thalix's betrayal runs deeper than we knew. He had corrupted nearly 30% of the fleet commanders. Governor Tarsus's Forge Worlds have been exclusively manufacturing arms for the rebels for almost a year. The official rebellion was just the tip of the spear. The body is our own, Cassia nodded, her expression calm. The news did not send a spike of fear. It did not trigger the static. It was simply a problem to be solved. Admiral Vorlag and Governor Tarsus are contained, Ryla continued. But they are not cooperative. They are true believers. They were convinced you were a liability, that Thalix was the only one who could save the Empire from you. They were, in a way, correct, Cassia said. Ryla's head snapped up. Majesty. The Empress they saw was a liability, Cassia said, her gaze distant. She was a puppet, her strings pulled by a shadow she could not even see. Thalix. In his arrogance and his madness, he forced a confrontation that I would have avoided for another 10 years. He was a monster. But his logic, his desire for a strong leader, was not wrong. Ryla looked profoundly uncomfortable. Your Majesty, his methods, Epsilon. His methods were butchery, Cassia said, her voice turning to ice. And he will be remembered as a traitor. But his diagnosis was accurate. We are an empire in crisis, led by a broken dynasty. That ends today. She stood, her simple robes seeming to carry more weight than her imperial armor ever had. Summon the conclave. What is left of it? I want every loyal fleet admiral, every planetary governor, and every sector chief in the obsidian room in 1 hour. Majesty, Ryla stammered. Some are off-world. Then they will attend by hollow, Cassia commanded. I am tired of this shadow war. General, I am tired of secrets. It is time the Empire remembered what it is like to be led. The obsidian room was fuller than she had expected. Dozens of holographic figures shimmered in their appointed seats, their expressions ranging from anxious to terrified to defiant. The few physically present admirals and governors, including a visibly relieved General Ryla, stood near the walls. Cassia entered alone. She wore no armor, no crown. She walked to the center of the room, to the great galactic map. It was a sea of red alerts, flashing warnings, and fractured supply lines. My lords, she began. Her voice, clear and unburdened by psionic power, filled the room. You are here because the Empire is on the brink of total collapse. A murmur of dissent rose. It is not, she continued, cutting them off. The rebellion in the Orion Rift is not our greatest threat. The traitors in our midst are not our greatest threat. Our greatest threat has been me. A stunned, absolute silence fell. For 10 years, Cassia said, her voice resonating with a truth that was colder than any weapon. You have been ruled by a ghost. You have been led by an empress who was unwell, an empress who let her grief dictate policy, an empress who was so terrified of her own past that she allowed paranoia and fear to rule this empire. She made impossible choices. She sacrificed worlds to save fleets. She listened to men like Thalix, because she believed, deep down, that she was as broken as he said she was. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every hollow projection, every living person. Thalix was a traitor. He was a butcher. He created this war, she stated, her voice hardening. He armed our enemies. He orchestrated the deaths of millions. He staged a coup. And he is dead. His co-conspirators, Governor Tarsus and Admiral Vrel are in custody. Their fleets are being systematically dismantled. The internal threat is over. She let that sink in. But the damage is profound. The rebels in the Rift, armed with our own ships, are now a true, existential threat. Our supply lines are in chaos. Our border worlds are undefended. And our people have lost faith. They see an Empress who cannot even hold her own citadel. She placed her hands on the holographic console. The Empress you knew is gone. She died in this room, with General Thalix. The woman who stands before you is Cassia Verandi, and I am here to fix what I have allowed to break. The map changed. It zoomed in on the forge worlds of the Xylo system. Governor Tarsus's assets are now seized by the Imperial throne. Effective immediately. His forges will stop producing warships. They will produce transport ships, prefabricated atmospheric processors, medical supplies, housing units. An admiral, a hard-bitten man named Chorus, spoke up. Majesty, with all respect, this is madness. We are at war. We need warships, not homes. We are at war, Admiral, because our people felt undefended and unheard, Cassia countered. The rebellion did not start with Thalix. It started with worlds on the fringe who believed the core had abandoned them. Thalix merely gave them guns. We will give them help. The map shifted again, to the burning, scarred surface of Epsilon Prime. My first act is to correct my first failure. The sacrifice logic that men like Thalix championed is dead. We will not sacrifice one civilian life for strategic gain. Epsilon will be the first world rebuilt. The full strength of Tarsus's repurposed forges will be directed there. We will make it a garden. We will show the galaxy what this empire truly is. Not a blade, but a shield, and a home. And the rebels, Admiral Chorus pressed, his holographic form stiff with disapproval. We just let them keep our ships. No, Admiral, Cassia said, her voice dropping, and for the first time, the Admiral saw the shadow of the Princess General. We will hunt them down. We will take back every ship, every system. But we will not do it with blind force. The map changed again, highlighting dozens of rebel-held systems. General Ryla, you will coordinate a new offensive, but it will be twofold. You will lead the fleet, but alongside your flagship will be a diplomatic contingent. Diplomacy, Chorus scoffed. They are butchers. Some are, Cassia agreed. The leaders, the ones who followed Thalix's brutal logic, the ones who glassed Epsilon, they will face imperial justice. But the rank and file, the disillusioned the worlds that joined them, because they were starving, or because Thalix lied to them. To them, we offer amnesty, we offer food, we offer a way back. She looked at Chorus. Your blade failed. Admiral, it has cost us half the Empire. We will now try my way. You will give them a choice, peace or annihilation. We will be physicians or we will be executioners. But the choice will be theirs. It was radical. It was brilliant. It was compassionate. And it was terrifyingly strong. This was not the Empress who hid from her nightmares. This was an Empress who had faced them, consumed them, and come out the other side. You have your orders, she said, her voice final. Rebuild, heal, and where healing is not possible, end this. Dismissed. The holograms vanished. The generals and admirals filed out, their minds reeling. But for the first time in a decade, they were not moving out of fear. They were moving with purpose. Cassia returned to the medbay. The room was empty. Her heart stopped. The sudden, irrational fear was a cold spike. I am not dead, Your Majesty. James's voice came from the small balcony attached to the room. Just contemplating the singular lack of cheeseburgers in this high-end establishment. She walked out onto the balcony. He was standing, leaning heavily on the railing, looking out over the Citadel's impossibly high gardens. He was in a simple, gray patient's uniform. "You should be in bed," she said, her voice softer than she had intended. "I should be a lot of things," he said, turning to her. He looked pale, and there was a new, faint scar over his eyebrow where his head had hit the wall. But his eyes were the same, calm, amused. A doctor on a quiet, boring diplomatic mission, preferably one with less god monsters and no four-armed generals who hit like asteroids. But here we are. "You heard?" she asked. The conclave broadcast yes. "I had the medical computer patch it in. We will be physicians or we will be executioners." Very dramatic. I approve. A little binary for my tastes, but solid. "You are not my doctor anymore. Are you?" He was silent for a moment. "No, I do not think so. I believe I treated the primary complaint. The follow-up care seems to be well in hand." "But you are not well," she said, looking at him. He was still in pain. "My ribs will mend," he said. "My brain, on the other hand, feels like it was used as a filter for an elder god's indigestion. But it will pass. I am human. We are resilient. We are basically cockroaches with anxiety." She laughed. A real, quiet laugh. "You saved my life. You saved my mind." "I held the door," he said, shrugging, which he immediately regretted, wincing in pain. "You did the hard part. You faced the void, and you cut the cord." "I could not have done it without you, James," she said, her voice a whisper. "You were my anchor." "I was the bait," he corrected, with a small smile. "And apparently I taste terrible." They stood in silence, watching the artificial sun move across the Citadel's inner sky. The chaos of the Empire felt very far away. "What happens now?" he asked. "For you?" "I rule," she said simply. "I undo the damage Thalix caused. I undo the damage I caused. I try to build an empire that Alistair would have been proud of." The name. She had said it. Alistair. She paused, waiting for the static, for the fire. There was nothing, just a quiet, profound sadness. A pang of loss. It was clean. It did not consume her. It just was. A single tear traced its way down her cheek. "It is just grief," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "It does not have teeth anymore." James looked at her, and his smile was real and warm. "That is what it is supposed to feel like. It is not a monster. Cassia, it is just a part of love, the part that is left over." She had never thought of it that way. She wiped the tear from her face. "And you, Doctor, what happens to you?" He sighed, looking out at the gardens. "I suppose my diplomatic mission here is over. Terra will recall me. I will write a very long, very unbelievable report that my superiors will classify as stress-induced fantasy. I will go home. I will treat colonists with space allergies." The idea of him leaving hit her with a physical force. The new quiet in her mind suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. "No," she said. He turned to her. "No, Your Majesty. I am a Terran citizen. I do not think you have the authority." "I am the Empress of 1,000 worlds," she said, a hint of the imperial ice returning to her voice. But it was different now. It was not a shield. "I think I can handle the diplomatic paperwork. Your mission is not over." "It is not," he asked, confused. "I am an empress without a single advisor I can trust," she said. "Thalix is dead. Tarsus and Vrel are traitors. Ryla is a good general, but she thinks in lines of attack. I am surrounded by warriors and politicians who see blades and shields." She turned to him. "I need a physician. I need someone who sees a wound and knows how to heal it. The Empire is wounded. James, I need your human logic. I need your hilariously impossible perspective. He stared at her. You want to make me an imperial advisor. I want you to stay, she said, her voice soft. I am offering you a position, first advisor to the throne. I am a doctor, he protested weakly. I do not know anything about running an empire. You know everything about running me, she said. And you are the only person in this galaxy who is not afraid of me. You are the... He held up a hand, wincing. Please do not say the only one I can trust. It is too much pressure. I am still on pain medication. Is that a yes? She asked. He sighed. A long, painful sound. He looked at the gardens. He looked at her. A cheeseburger, he said. What? I will stay, he said. On one condition. You have to find me a cheeseburger. The thing I mumbled about. It is a Terran food. It is ground meat and cheese and bread. It is awful for you. And I need one. She stared at him. His one condition for becoming the most powerful man in the Empire was a primitive food item. I believe that can be arranged, Lord Advisor Hawk, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. Just James, please, he said, leaning back against the railing. Or Doctor. Lord Advisor sounds like I should be wearing a ridiculous hat. She stood beside him, the two of them looking out at the future. The Empire was in chaos. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 10 years, Cassia Verandi was not afraid. She was not alone. She had her physician. It had been 6 months since the day of fire and severance. 6 months since the Citadel fell, and was reclaimed in the span of a single, violent hour. The Obsidian Room was the same. The great holographic map of the Empire still pulsed at its center. But the atmosphere was unrecognizable. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet, driving sense of purpose. Cassia Verandi, Empress of 1,000 worlds, stood at the head of the table. She wore no armor, only the simple, dark robes of her office. Her face was clear, her violet eyes calm. The shadows that had haunted them for a decade were gone, leaving behind only the woman. At her right hand, in the seat that had once belonged to General Thalix, sat Dr. James Hawk. He looked profoundly out of place among the uniformed Creosians and the holographic, multi-limbed admirals. He wore a simple, dark gray Terran suit, his medical kit long since replaced by a data slate. General Ryla, your report, Cassia said, her voice a clear, steady instrument. General Ryla rose, her feline features composed. Your Majesty, Lord Advisor, the Epsilon Prime reconstruction is ahead of schedule. The repurposed forges of Xylos have proven miraculously efficient. Governor Tarsus's infrastructure was, if nothing else, robust. The first of the new atmospheric processors went online last week. The southern continent is already showing a reduction in atmospheric toxins. And the amnesty, James asked, his voice cutting cleanly through the military jargon. How is the physician part of our plan faring? Ryla turned to him. Her respect for the human now absolute. The diplomatic corps reports surprising success. Lord Advisor, over 40% of the rebel cells in the rift have laid down their arms. It seems the promise of food and reconstruction was a more potent weapon than our plasma cannons. Thalix's rebellion was built on lies, but it was fueled by desperation. You were correct. Good, Cassia said. We are healing. But not all parts of the body wish to be healed. Admiral Chorus, your report on the executioner phase. The holographic form of the old, hard-bitten admiral shimmered. Your Majesty, the martyrs, as they call themselves, are a different problem. They have rejected amnesty. They are the true believers of Thalix's doctrine. They see his death not as a traitor's end, but as a sacrifice. They are fighting with a fanaticism that is costly. They are fighting because Thalix took everything from them. And then he was the only thing they had left, James murmured, almost to himself. We did not just kill their leader. We killed their god, Cassia nodded, understanding the grim psychology. They are not just a military target, Admiral. They are a crisis of faith. What is their status? Contained, Chorus said gruffly. We have them blockaded in the Hades cluster, a nest of asteroid bases. They are well armed, using the last of Tarsus's shadow fleet. They are staging suicide runs against our medical transports. They are not trying to win. They are trying to die, and to take as many of us with them as possible. Then their request shall be granted, Cassia said, her voice devoid of heat. Admiral Chorus, you have my authorization. End it. Use the full strength of the third phalanx. I will not allow this cult of death to poison the new peace. I want a clean, fast excision. Majesty, Chorus bowed, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. But, Cassia continued, holding his gaze, your primary targets are their ships, their bases, not their escape pods. Any who surrender, even at the last second, are to be taken alive. We are ending a cult, Admiral, not staging a massacre. Is that clear? Chorus hesitated, but the steel in her voice was absolute. Yes, Your Majesty, it is clear. Good. This conclave is adjourned, Cassia said. The holograms vanished. The generals filed out, leaving Cassia and James alone in the vast, quiet room. Cassia let out a long breath, walking to the great window, which now looked out on the reconstructed gardens instead of the tactical map. A cult, she said, shaking her head. He is dead, and still he creates monsters. He built his entire philosophy on the idea that strength was the only virtue, James said, coming to stand beside her. He forgot that true believers are, by definition, unreasonable. You cannot heal a mind that has chosen to be sick. A physician and a philosopher. Dr. Hawk, she said, a small smile touching her lips. Just a doctor, Your Majesty, he replied. And still, technically, unemployed. Terra is getting very insistent in its communiques. They seem to believe you have kidnapped me. I believe their last message used the term involuntary diplomatic internment. You are the Lord Advisor to the Imperial Throne, Cassia countered, turning to him. Your internment is voluntary, and you are paid, extravagantly. I might add. The salary is fine, James said, but the benefits are terrible. I have yet to receive my one, very simple, contractual obligation. The cheeseburger, Cassia said, her smile widening. You are relentless. I am a man of simple needs, and I was promised ground meat and processed cheese. My human heart pines for it. Your imperial chefs keep sending me sculpted protein on a sweet cake. It is an offense. They are Xylosians, James. Their concept of fast food involves minerals. Be patient. She looked at him, her expression softening. The lines of exhaustion were stark on his face, but his eyes were clear, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked happy. He was no longer just her anchor. He was her partner. In the past 6 months, they had become a seamless unit. She was the mind and the will of the Empire. He was its heart and its conscience. He read every report, not for its strategic value, but for its human value. He flagged supply lines that were overstraining populations. He pointed out where her new, efficient policies were creating unforeseen hardships. He kept her from becoming the cold, logical blade that Thalix had always wanted. And she kept him safe. She had built a quiet, impenetrable wall of imperial power around him, ensuring that the remnants of Thalix's conspiracy could never touch him. You seem quiet, Cassia, he said, dropping the titles as he always did when they were alone. The conclave went well. Epsilon is healing. Chorus has his orders. What is wrong? Nothing, she said. She turned back to the window. That is the problem. It is quiet. It has been 6 months, and I still wake up expecting the fire, the static. And there is nothing, she whispered. It is just morning. Yesterday, I was reviewing the transport manifests, and I found a record from the Cygnus star, a flight plan, filed by Alistair, from 11 years ago. It was for a joyride he wanted to take to see a nebula that he said looked like a Creosian cat. James watched her, his expression gentle. I did not feel the fire, she said, a sense of wonder in her voice. I just remembered. I remembered his laugh, how stupid it was, and I smiled, and then I felt sad. Just sad. A clean, simple ache, and then I went back to the manifests. She looked at him, her violet eyes clear. It is just a memory, James, not a monster. You gave me that. You gave me back my brother. I did not, James said softly. I just helped you chase the monster out of the room, so you two could be alone. Grief is not an enemy, Cassia. It is just love with nowhere to go. You and your human logic, she said, her voice thick with an emotion that was not sadness. He stepped closer. The space between them was no longer doctor and patient. It was not Empress and advisor. You saved me, she whispered, stating it as a simple fact. We saved each other, he replied, his voice just as quiet. You gave me a purpose beyond space allergies, and you have not had me executed, which I appreciate. She laughed, a genuine, warm sound. The day is not over, Dr. Hawk. He smiled, and he did something he had not done before. He reached out and took her hand. It was not the desperate grip of an anchor. It was not the deferential touch of a subject. It was just a connection. Warm, solid, real. You are not alone in this anymore, Cassia, he said. She looked at their joined hands. The Empress of 1,000 worlds, and the doctor from a backwater planet. It was the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. I know, she said. A chime interrupted the moment. A new imperial servant, a young Creosian with nervous spots, appeared. Your Majesty, he bowed deeply. Lord Advisor, your meal has arrived. From the Terran exchange you ordered? James's head snapped up. What? A second servant entered carrying a sealed, thermo-regulated silver platter. I pulled some strings, Cassia said, a mischievous light in her eyes that he had never seen before. The kitchens have officially surrendered. This was imported, from a cargo hauler named the Greasy Spoon. It sounds appropriately dreadful. The servant placed the platter on a table and lifted the lid. There it was, a genuine, bona fide cheeseburger. It was slightly crushed from the journey, but the smell of fried meat and melted cheese filled the room. James looked at it as if it were the crown jewels. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. He picked it up with a reverence that made Cassia laugh again. He took a large bite. He chewed slowly, his eyes closed. Well, she asked. He swallowed. It is objectively terrible. The bun is stale. The meat is overcooked. It is perfect. He was about to take another bite when a third figure entered the room. This one was not a servant. It was one of her personal shadow agents, the Cygnian remnants she trusted. Your Majesty, the agent said, his voice a digitized whisper. He did not bow. He simply materialized from a patch of shadow. The deep space probes, the ones you sent to the Cerulean sector. Cassia's good mood vanished. She had sent those probes months ago to the last known location of the usurper's flagship, to the place where she had been infected. Report, she commanded. The agent placed a thin, Black data slate on the table, next to the cheeseburger. James put the burger down. Cassia picked up the slate. She activated it. The air filled with a storm of data. Energy readings. Gravitational anomalies. "I do not understand," she said. "This is just background noise." "Filter for the psionic resonance. Your Majesty," the agent whispered. "Pattern 666. James leaned in. His medical and scientific curiosity piqued. "She is filtering it." Cassia applied the filter. The static resolved. It collapsed into a single, impossibly thin signal. It was not a signal from the Cerulean sector. It was a signal pointing away from it, out into the deep black void between galaxies. "What is it?" she whispered. "It is not a distress call," James said. His voice suddenly grim. He was reading the mathematical language embedded in the signal. It was terrifyingly simple. "It is not a message." "What is it then?" Cassia asked. James looked at her, his eyes filled with a new, cold understanding. "It is a beacon," he said. "A lure. The creature. The void that hungers." It was not a rogue entity. Cassia. It was not unique. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. The usurper had not been the source. He had just been the first victim she knew of. "It was a scout," she breathed. "It was one of many." The beacon pulsed in the holographic display. A single, repeating mathematical concept. "We are here. We are waiting. We are hungry." The war was not over. The battle for her soul was won. But the battle for the galaxy had just been announced. Cassia looked at James. The old terror tried to find a purchase in her mind, but found nothing but cold, hard resolve. She was not the broken girl. She was the Empress. He looked at the data slate and then at his half-eaten cheeseburger. He sighed. "Well," James Hawk said, picking up the burger. "This certainly complicates my request for vacation time." Cassia did not smile. She just looked at the signal from the dark. "You do not get vacation time, Lord Advisor," she said. "I was afraid you were going to say that," he said. He took another bite. "At least the enemy has the decency to call ahead." She took his free hand. Her grip was firm. Her mind was clear. Her heart was full. The Empire was still in chaos. A new enemy, one older than stars, was waiting in the dark. But Cassia Verandi was not afraid. She was not alone, and she was finally ready for the fight.